Well, this is the spring lecture of Dr. Sobey, since it's not annual. And he will continue to talk about his experiences with Dr. Reich and in orgonomy. This format today is a little more open in that he's going to talk specifically about the history of the last years working with Reich and what is referred to as the conspiracy period, which has been very, very carefully documented by Dr. Reich and the others working with Dr. Reich in a very little-known 3-volume collection called The Conspiracy File, which Dr. Reich distributed to the members of the Orgonomic Institute at that time. Dr. Sobey was directly involved with that, and it's a rare opportunity to have somebody who was there and actually went through that period. It's often been my experience in talking with Dr. Sobey and others who went through it, but that it's extremely difficult for many younger people to understand what kind and just how real the attack and the constant threat was, and how many lives were really damaged and destroyed, and how much of the work was damaged and destroyed and misrepresented and misconstrued. Some people were around at that time, know it, but it's often lost in retrospect and often seen as some sort of vague, feeling of persecution, and it really isn't when you really begin to look at it. And so Dr. Sobey offers a rare opportunity in terms of responding to that period of history, and will give his personal reminiscences about it, but he's also brought, which is a rare opportunity, some of the conspiracy documents and letters that will give you a feeling for what was going on. He'll read from some of that. And I think the format that we discussed was that it's open to questions, and as long as you don't interrupt him in the middle of a particular thought or point, it's fine to ask questions as they come up and give him a chance to respond to them. So Dr. Sobey, who is hesitating about continuing with this ongoing lecture series, so try to convince him that he should continue.
Okay, he said it all. We can go.
We'll take a break about halfway through and just get coffee. So.
Yes, it has to do with primarily the medical condition called emotional plague, and how it created the conspiracy against orgonomy, or Dr. Reich, and primarily the energy. The one who followed the path of the development of orgone energy. It was a trying time, and I'm telling you, when I look back on it, I just can't believe it, how the killers can go after you, if you threaten them in any way. And just to introduce it, the emotional plague. The term emotional plague has no defamatory connotation. It does not refer to conscious malice, moral or biological degeneration. An organism which from birth is... No wonder I couldn't read this. An organism which from birth is constantly impeded in its natural way of locomotion develops artificial forms of locomotion. Right. It limps or moves on crutches. Similarly, an individual moves through life by the means of the emotional plague. If from birth its natural self-regulation, life manifestations have been suppressed. The individual afflicted by the emotional plague limbs, characterologically speaking. The emotional plague is a chronic myopathy. That is the ergonomic term, but it's what we would call sickness or disease of the organism. It makes its first appearance with the first suppression of genital love life. on a mass scale. It became an epidemic which has tortured the people of the earth for thousands of years. There are no grounds for the assumption that it passes in a hereditary manner from mother to child. Rather, it is implanted in the child from the first day of life. It is an epidemic disease like schizophrenia or cancer, with this important difference: it manifests itself essentially in social living. Periodically, like any other plague, such as bubonic plague, cholera, or AIDS, the emotional plague takes on the dimension of a pandemic in a form of a gigantic breakthrough of sadism. Ruinous lying and gossip, which is one of the major form of killing, gossip. And criminality such as the Catholic Inquisition of the Middle Ages, the Holocaust of World War II, the slaughter in Cambodia, apartheid in South Africa, numerous ethnic killings, which is happening now in Bosnia and Rwanda. The Red Witch hunts during the 1920s, that's another example. The McCarthy hearings, and the numerous, again, as I say, ethnic killings that are happening now. If we did not consider the emotional plague a disease in the strict sense of the word, we would be in danger of mobilizing the policeman's club against it, instead of medicine and education. It is characteristic of the emotional plague that it necessitates the policeman's club and thus reproduces itself. Nevertheless, in spite of the threat to life which the emotional plague represents, it will never be mastered by means of the policeman's club. Once I discussed this with Dr. Wright, since it is a disease, what about capital punishment? We don't apply capital punishment with people with, say, smallpox or cholera or tuberculosis, which spread to other people, and they die as a result of it. And what about, the crimes that are committed, murders, really. And he said that was a question that he often had trouble with. Since he said it's a disease, we don't kill other people who have disease which kill other people. But he said there's only one instance where he felt that he would apply the death penalty if somebody came towards him with a gun or a knife. He would have to apply, to defend himself or his life, capital punishment. But the other way, if somebody, well, of course, everybody's debating that, and I'm not sure myself.
Can I each interject to interrupt?
Right.
I mean, what, in a sense, if it's a disease function, say, similar in some way to cancer in the individual organism, and if we have a tumor or cancer that's operable, you would remove it
Right.
surgically. So, in a sense, could you conceive of capital punishment as a surgical removal from the social organism of diseased cells?
No. You're removing the whole organism. We don't remove the whole organism when somebody's spread cholera to other people with cholera or tuberculosis, well, as far as we know, cancer is not contagious, although there's questions now since the virus is concerned in causation of cancer, whether it can be spread, I don't know.
But then he would have been in favor of isolation of...
Well, yes, certainly. We do isolate. We used to isolate smallpox, and we still do, actually. And other contagious, scarlet fever. I remember kids got scarlet fever. It was very contagious and very deadly to the organism and to anybody else who got it. And you don't remove the whole organism. But go ahead.
The difference is that someone that has smallpox, you don't deter somebody else from getting smallpox or from having smallpox if you kill that person with smallpox. On the other hand, if someone is a murderer and you apply the death penalty, you may deter a certain amount of people from killing other people.
Yeah, look at that. I cannot. I mean, he had the same problem. It is a disease. Criminality is a disease. The emotional plague, person infected with the emotional plague, will justify crime. Does justify crime, right? Either you believe they were born with that, or they, as a result of the deprivation of their functioning from birth, and it becomes a disease. I was going to mention it. What's
The thing that I see is that when you have TB or you have those other things, they're treated. People that are sent to jail for rape and so on and so forth, they're said they're never treated. So, I mean,
no. They do get treatment, and I can tell you a treatment is applied.
What's a treatment?
Wait a minute. I worked in a federal penitentiary as a psychiatrist for 3 years, and I didn't know about ergonomy at the time, and it was just all the psychiatrists and even the penologists at the time, and even today I read that they have no adequate means of changing that around. It doesn't mean someday we won't. But of course, now we're getting in the tertiary stage of treatment. Dr. Reich was said it could only be prevented by primary, and that is, I'll go on. Primary care primarily can only be mastered by life being protected from infancy on. Is it that simple? No. It is difficult. Nobody can even imagine how difficult it is. Wilhelm Reich, however, was optimistic and said it may take only 500 years if we don't blow ourselves off the face of the earth. Now I want to describe how the emotional plague organized attacks and finally resulted in Dr. Reich's death. On September 4th, 1948, Wilhelm Reich held his first open meeting on the oncoming conspiracy and plague attack against him. He opened up the seminar on the oncoming plague attack at Organon. It had even started, it started because at the meeting, Dr. Hoppe, who was from Israel, an ergonomist there, was held at the customs, or what do you want to call it, asking why he was coming, why he was visiting Dr. Reich. Did he know that he was seducing children and experimenting with this and that, and that he was a communist? And Hoppe talked his way through. A.S. Neil of Summerhill, of course, he wasn't a communist at the time, but he was quite a sympathizer, and he had a lot of friends, and he was not allowed into the country at that time. At that meeting, where Dr. Reich stated that a serious attack on ergonomy had already begun in its infancy stage, and was going to continue until he felt no matter what he tried to do, it would end up in his death. Well, he said, no, it's not in this country, you know. So he said, but all you fellas could leave the organization or the studying. He said, I wouldn't hold it against you if you're not prepared. He said, I'm prepared to go to the stake. He said, because I could not stop my research. And it was important. Attending at that meeting is important. It was Willem Reich, of course, and Hoppy, and T.P. Wolf, who was quite a name in psychiatry at that time. He and Flanders Dunbar did the definitive, at that time, book on psychosomatic medicine at Columbia Psychiatric Institute. He was quite an intellectual, very nice person. Okay. Then there was Mickey Sheriff, a young student, psychology student from Harvard, very knowledgeable, very intelligent, and very helpful to Dr. Reich. And Greta Hoff, who was from Norway, became Mickey's wife. She was very helpful to the work and to Dr. Reich. And Michael Rothenberg, who another very capable, intelligent, who now is taken over Dr. Spock's baby book. You all heard of that. And he is the editor and has been.
He's the writer.
Writer. Dr. Lewis and I communicate with him quite a bit. Very nice fella. Very nice. He doesn't have much to do with ergonomy, but
Well, actually, he's still done some training in Seattle. He's required in Seattle, and when I've been out there, he's given talk,
he
doesn't practice.
no, he gets. I don't know what talks on ergonomy.
When we give lectures, he's attended and spoken.
Oh, he does.
Informally, not formally, but he's very, very positive.
Very nice fellow.
And has had a positive influence. If you follow the editions of Spock's Baby and Childcare, he's brought a much more sex-positive attitude to Baby and Childcare, which reaches literally million, probably
all over the world.
Next to the Bible, the Quran is the largest selling book in the world. Is it? Yeah.
Then also there was Ola Rocknes from Oslo, Norway. He was well-known professor of religion and philosophy in Norway. Very nice fellow, very intelligent, very helpful. He worked with Dr. Reich when Dr. Reich was in Norway after. Dr. Reich came to Norway from Vienna, and when the Nazis came in, he saw the handwriting on the wall, and he went to. He belonged to the psychoanalytical group in Vienna, and was one of the leaders. And he migrated to Denmark, but he had trouble there, primarily because of the Nazis. And then he went to Norway, where he was accepted quite openly at the university, and he did a lot of his early electrical experiments on sexuality, which, trying to determine the electrical charge during intercourse and the orgasm and everything else. And at that time, they say, okay, now the guy's gone off his rocker. Of course, now today, everybody's doing that. That was Ola Rocknes, and he remained in Norway, but he visited Organon, Ranger Remain many times, all over the country. He'd come. Very nice fellow. And Philip Gold, who was nice old guy, and he'd been one of the older psychiatrists. And Ferrari Hardoy, who came from Argentina, very capable. He had a very severe accident one time and was out of work for a long time. And then Pelletier was another psychiatrist, and Thorburn was another psychiatrist. Manny Levine, who was my very close friend, and who Dr. Reich thought very highly of. Very intelligent, very smart, very capable, and very willing to do a lot of work. And he was unfortunately killed in an automobile accident coming down from Vermont after having worked on an important paper on schizophrenia for Dr. Reich. And Dr. Willie came from Oklahoma, very well-known psychiatrist there, the head of many psychiatric institutes there, came to New York after reading Dr. Reich's work, very impressed, and went into training, opened up a practice. And Dr. Willie was a very imposing man, white hair, very well-spoken, I'll use the term wasp. And even though the psychiatrists in Nassau County knew of his connection with Dr. Reich, he had a sort of a charismatic hold on everybody, and they elected him president of Nassau County Psychiatric Society. But then after a while, then the triumvirate there, Baker, Rayfield, Duval, and Cott, they obviously were there. They all came from New Jersey, and they were working in the state hospital there. They were one of the first 3 or 4 who went into practice and training with Dr. Reich. Dr. Baker, of course, was extremely helpful to Dr. Reich, and very intelligent man. I liked him very much, and he liked me. But after Dr. Reich died, he decided he wanted to go on his own way, and he left the rest of the organimists that was still there. I mean, we had our own organization. And then my partner for about 35 years, Dr. Sidney Handelman, some of you probably know, very capable, extremely intelligent. And then there was Sobey. Then there was the 2 Trop boys, fellas, Simeon Trop and Oscar Trop. Anybody remember them? Oh, yeah. Simeon was the younger of the Trops, very capable, very eager to work, and had quite a big practice. We all did, actually, at that time, in the beginning. Well, we always did. And Oscar Trop had been a surgeon, quite a capable surgeon, well-known surgeon, and he decided he wanted to get out of cutting up people, and he came into orgonomy. And when Dr. Reich went up to Rangeley to work full-time up there, he dropped his practice and took a house near near Organon, and worked with Dr. Reich. Then there was Washington, William Washington. He was the black physicist that Mickey Sheriff and Michael Rothenberg brought from Harvard. And he, on his own, had gotten interested in Dr. Reich's physical experiments with the energy and electroscopic and the field meter and so forth. And somehow or other, Mickey Sheriff, who was, as I said, a student at Harvard, they met each other and told Washington he was very close to Dr. Reich, and Washington said he would meet with Dr. Reich and help him if he could. And there's a whole thing on that. I won't go on still a mystery. And then,
You should feel, you should feel a little bit. I mean, essentially, he got very involved with Dr. Reich's work, very intimately. There's a lot of documentation.
well, I got the document, but go ahead.
And in the midst of all this, at the point when Dr. Reich was working on a phenomenal invention or discovery, which still remains
The motor.
a motor which came close to something approaching perpetual motion. It's unclear, but it was certainly
Very little energy,
a motor that ran continually with very little output of input of energy. And Washington was involved in developing the plans, and then suddenly disappeared.
No, you're going too fast.
Okay, well, you were there.
Yeah, I was there. So would Edward Murrow. I was there.
And the main thing is it's never been figured out why or how.
All right. And then there was Tiger Hamilton, who was a very interesting man. He was a darling of the psychoanalytical associations in New York. So was A.S. Neal in England. He was a darling of the Psychoanalytical Institute in England and also Europe. He ran a school for children, some disturbed, some not. But Hamilton also had one up in Connecticut. I forgot the name of the town. Doesn't matter. And he and his wife ran that school. And when he heard about Dr. Reich and his theories on self-regulation and everything else, he became very excited and interested. And he changed over the whole ideology of how to run his school, which he had done before with all the psychoanalysts in the United States, really. And when they heard his connection with Dr. Reich, they dropped him, and he was a non-person, too. Okay. Then, as Dr. Reich said, of course, the whole thing was being precipitated acutely by, in April 1947, there appeared in Harper's Magazine an article by Mildred Eddy Brady, which seemed to launch an attack upon an innocent group of artists who preferred to live happily in a colony on the West Coast. The tone of the article was malicious. It did not say in so many words what it expressed in more or less hidden insinuation. When this article appeared, William Reich told his friends that it was not directed against the artist but against him. In this article, he, Dr. Reich, was described as the originator of a new cult of sex. His friends did not believe that Reich was right. This article missed its mark. Therefore, it was soon followed by another article, appropriately entitled The Strange Case of William Reich, which appeared in the May 26th issue of the New Republic, a magazine under the allegedly progressive editorship of Henry Wallace. Now, Henry Wallace was vice president under FDR, and he was a liberal, but he was not a fellow traveler or a red fascist. Why I say red fascist, Dr. Reich had consistently referred to the communists as red fascists. He, early in the late 20s, after he spent some time in Russia, and at first was quite hopeful and soon found out how life negative and sex negative they were in communist Russia, so-called. He recognized the Communist Party that existed in Russia at that time, not as Marxist, but as red fascists, long before such a awareness had gained acceptance as it is today, that there aren't any Marxist communists, but they're all red fascists. Well, of course, now in Russia they've changed, but this is at the time. Wilhelm Reich told his friends again that the red fascists had become busy. They still did not believe it. Did Wallace know it? Some thought it was the writing of a frustrated, neurotic crank. Others thought that such sensationalist writing increased circulation, which I'm sure it did. The lawyer of the Wilhelm Reich Institute, when asked whether the author of such an article could be sued for libel, said, if you could sue a person for what he thinks of you, you could do it. But the writer of this article was clever enough to avoid a libel suit. It was the direction of a cowardly, sneaky sniper who did not dare to come out in the open to fight the mass psychology of fascism, which revealed the mechanism also of red fascism. He was sneaky because he was sneaky. The article by Brady called on the state authorities and the American Psychoanalytical Association to stop Reich's work. We need not consider the Psychoanalytical Association, which has no authority in matters of orgone biophysics. The American state, however, which the communists designed to destroy, or red fascists designed to destroy, and to replace by the totalitarian regime, followed the lead given by the snipers, Brady specifically. We don't know as yet what circles picked up this lead and induced the Food and Drug Administration to carry on the slander. One day during the summer of 1947, an officer of the Portland, Maine division of the FDA turned up at Orgonon. A friend of his had read Brady's article and told him it might be worthwhile to look into this matter. He was friendly. We gave him all the information he wanted about the orgone accumulator. However, when he came a second time, now with orders from the New York office, and asked about details concerning Reich's conflict with Freud, he was referred to the literature. Incidentally, this officer had not known the name of Sigmund Freud. We had at first nothing against an investigation by the Food and Drug Administration. On the contrary, we welcomed the fact that now the orgone accumulator would come into the public eye. But why, we asked ourselves, had this administration not paid any attention as long as the facts about the orgone accumulator appeared in the scientific literature? And why did it become interested now as a result of Brady's smear article, which implied pornographic purposes, accumulators, which she said he rents out to his patients who presumably derive orgasmic potency from it. What a sniper's sentence. We only wish the accumulator could provide such sexual... I tell you, I can laugh, we can all laugh, but I tell you it was scary. I mean, you got all these Gestapo troops, and that's all they were. The New York office of the Food and Drug Administration continued the investigation. At first, Wilhelm Reich had to make it clear to the investigating officers that they were not dealing with a vice ring, a sex racket, as Brady's insinuation had made them believe, but with a scientific institute. They asked questions such as these: how many women are there? What do you do with you women? It was not the examiners who were to be blamed for such errors, but the Bradys and her followers. This investigation by the Food and Drug Administration went on for some 5 months at Orgonon, Maine, in Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Berkeley, California. Wilhelm Reich said, had this article in the investigation had come 5 or 6 earlier, the whole work in experimental orgone therapy might well have been smashed up, just as the snipers hoped it would. The work had not yet reached its present maturity. This time the attempt failed. There are many physicians who are working with the orgone accumulator. There are many good results on record. The orgone accumulator and the whole work had become widely known. Nevertheless, he said there is still the danger of a chain reaction of pestilential actions. It is precisely because of the possibility that such vital and important work, important for millions of sick people, could have easily been smashed by one single cowardly Bradley and an ignorant government official who is sorely misled, that this severe warning must go out to all who work in our field. Okay. A condensation of the article was then published in Everybody's Digest, a magazine with millions of readers, prominently displayed on the front cover as the feature article. The potential reader having had his attention called to it by a prominent notice on the front cover of the previous month's issue. As in the New Republic, several prominence was given to 5 single statements made by Reich in his publications, length 1 sentence each, which were taken out of context so as to be deliberately misleading. Excerpts appeared then in Scandinavian, French, and Swiss papers. A malicious article based on Brady's article in Harper's appeared in a Montreal daily paper. On the other hand, letters were received from physicians who were highly interested in the discovery of the orgone. Okay, now here's some of the way it developed. In May 1947, The Strange Case of Wilhelm Reich, a slanderous article by Mildred Brady was published under the editorship of Henry A. Wallace. At that time, a red fascist stooge. And he was. He was a very nice guy, but he didn't quite understand how they were using him. And later on he did, and he died of a broken heart. Brady has attempted by defamation, distortion, and insinuation to picture Reich as a quack, insinuating that he was not an MD, which he was, that the orgone energy is a figment of his imagination, which it is not, that he claims that the orgone energy accumulator can provide orgastic potency, which he never claimed, and then said a state investigation should be made. In 1947, Howell Susskind publisher brought out Freud, His Life and His Mind by Helen Walker Puner, who was well-known psychoanalyst, in which misinformation about Dr. Reich and his work were obviously lifted from Brady's slander. The publisher corroborated the obvious writing. I am satisfied that her, Mrs. Pruner's, inquiry regarding the article in Harper's was consciously undertaken, and that she would not have incorporated any material in her book which she regarded as slanderous. On August 16, 1947, an editorial by Harrison Smith, president of the Saturday Review of Literature, appeared in this magazine and on the Brady defamation. Smith wrote to a reader, "I had not intended to condemn, sight unseen, Dr. Reich's work. It appears that I owe Dr. Reich an apology. no correction or apology was ever printed. On December 6, 1947, an article in Collier's magazine condensed 12 wrong statements from Brady slander into 29 lines. William Davenport of Collier wrote to a reader, "The books and pamphlets by Dr. Reich and about him, in my opinion, bear out everything the author said. But he did not cite one single passage by substantiate the bearing out of the 12 false statements." Davenport also wrote that he was having the whole thing investigated, quite independent of this office, which was never followed through. On December 17, 1947, an article appeared in the McGill Daily, Montreal, Canada, took over the Brady slander, stating it as a fact in the most sensational and scurrilous way possible. Date, December, Everybody's Digest spread the Brady lies to thousands of readers by printing a condensation of her New Republic article. Another one, excerpts from the foreign papers were also published. In March 1948, the article, the Bulletin of the Menninger Clinic reprinted by the Brady slander in full as a valid presentation of the strange case of William Reich. Having no valid grounds in which to attack WR's work, the managers gladly used this juicy lie. In May 1948, a group of psychoanalysts and neurologists attending the American Psychiatric Association's convention in Washington, D.C., decided to try to smash Dr. Reich's work and launched supposed investigation of ergonomists by incompetent neurosurgeons. Dr. Ellsworth S. Baker, Chief of Women's Service, Dr. Chester Rayfield, Senior Resident Physician at New Jersey State Hospital at Marlborough, were interrogated by Dr. Henry Cotton. Now, here's a guy, you wouldn't believe it. In fact, when I had my residency in psychiatry at the VA, Veterans Administration in New Jersey, he lectured to us. And this is in 48, 49. That was the height of lobotomies, too. But Henry Cotton, his solution to treatment of schizophrenia was to cut out about 12 feet of the person's colon. Believe it. He was investigating Dr. Reich as a fraud. And Dr. Berkeley Gordon, and he was a big shot. He was head of the Psychiatric Association in New Jersey and the national one, too. And Dr. Berkeley Gordon, also in a slanderous way about origami, and then asked to sever these three psychiatrists to sever their connections with the hospital. Dr. Cotton died from an overdose of sleeping tablets 2 weeks later. I was surprised I didn't blame it on somebody in ergonomy. This when Dr. Hoppy was when he came to the meeting, this particular meeting, Dr. Hoppy arrived at the Idlewild, which is Kennedy Airfield, New York, en route from Israel to attend the conference, was taken to Ellis Island by an immigration officer who, on the basis of the Brady article, was of the personal opinion that the Oregon Institute was illegal. Hoppy was released 48 hours later on a $5,000 bond after a protest to the Justice Department in Washington. He nearly missed the conference. And in September 48, Langfeldt, a neurologist from Norway, returned to Norway from a visit to the United States and said in a lecture at the psychiatric clinic that psychiatrists in the United States considered Wilhelm Reich insane. He later wrote that he was sorry. He was not aware that Brady was not a medical doctor, and that he could not remember the names of those psychiatrists with whom he had discussed Brady's article, and on whose gossip he had based his false assertion. That was all the beginning. Brady's article, it's like a forest fire. You have a little fire here, campfire, it catches one tree on fire, one tree, the whole forest. That's what happened. Nobody, none of these people ever said they read the books, they'd like to discuss it with us. Well, that goes, I'll tell you about that later. And when you would ask where they got it from, well, the Brady's article. And here Langfeldt from Norway said he didn't even know she was a doctor. Now, the psychiatrist who told him that, well, they knew she wasn't a doctor, but they never read the books, among which were the character analysis, for example. That was forbidden. Now it's not. Now, I just saw this just the other day. There's an article in the Psychiatric Times. It comes out, sent to all the psychiatrists and everything. And it's a commentary by Dr. Galen. Eric? And where's Eric?
I'm not sure who that is.
Galen, he's a professor of psychiatry at Columbia University Medical School and president of the Hastings Center for Bioethical Research. Don't know? Well, anyhow, he has talking about how, with the Clinton's health plan, how psychiatry should be given a bigger role, as though, on the same status as physical illness. And he explains, he gave a short history, like from Freud on. He said, Sigmund Freud decided that people did not have to be exclusively either crazy or sane, but that a normal person like himself or people he knew could be partly crazy. These normal people who were still in touch with realities exhibited only isolated symptoms of irrationality, phobias, compulsions, and such. Freud invented a new category of mental disease now called neuroses, thereby vastly increasing the population of the mentally ill. Some 30 years later, Wilhelm Reich said, one does not even have to display mental symptoms to be mentally ill, that one could suffer from character disorders. The personalities of even completely asymptomatic individuals might so limit their productivity or pleasure in life that we are justifying diagnosing them as mentally ill. Then medicine discovered the psychosomatic disorders and so forth. But isn't that something? Anyhow, what was that? It was only the other day.
He's saying that as a valid justification.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't say...
Well, now Dr. Wright's dead, so he's quotable.
Probably, you're right. Well, everybody... it's a pretty well standard book now, isn't it, Eric? And the character now, the first part, they do study it a lot, don't they?
As long as you don't read the third section.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
But the attitudes vary. Sometimes, when I was studying at the Institute, Wright's chapter on compulsive character.
The which character?
The compulsive character.
Oh, yeah.
Now, one of the teachers made a point of saying that you could see in reading that chapter that Wright was already becoming paranoid psychotic. And I didn't even bother challenging him on it.
No.
I don't even know what he meant. And then other people teach it very respectfully as one of the foundations of psychoanalytic theory, characterology.
Right. But he just objected. Well, he only saw oncoming psychosis with the compulsive description of the compulsive character.
I have no idea what he meant.
Yeah. Well.
As far as I could tell, right description is
Yeah.
perfectly
Well.
acceptable.
All right. But this guy, yeah. I mean, he stuck it in. I mean, he put it in this main article. You know, you get the Psychiatric Times, don't you? And I'd like to see what.
In such a case, it would be wrong to challenge that teacher to explain himself?
Well, no. Sometimes
No, I
mean, this
wonder,
one
as
here?
as a general rule, in a case like that, if it's proper or improper to do one or the other.
No, yeah. Then you go. Eric can't prove his point, and the other one can't prove his point. There's no point.
I'm only speculating, but this particular teacher was the son of a very famous analyst, one of Freud's students.
What was he? So did he search?
I speculate that he heard things from his father. Who must have known Reich.
You wouldn't want to give his father's name, would you?
Well, his father was Nürnberg.
Oh yeah, well, Dr. Ike, I saw.
Nürnberg's son. I speculated privately that
I saw.
it must be based on rumors that he heard.
Yeah, I saw pictures of Reich and Nuremberg. You know, when they were young and very much involved.
Historically, Nuremberg is a psychoanalyst, but also one of the people who was actively involved in spreading rumors about Reich.
Yeah.
But you see, the rumor is still being spread. So when he doesn't ask, on what basis do you consider him becoming psychotic? All the people who are sitting in that room tacitly accept that. So there's a whole new field, a whole new crop of people who accept the lie without even knowing that there's a reason to
I
question.
understand what you're saying, and these, you know, you always desire to stop it. You know, you just waste a lot of time. I think I told the last time I spoke about this example of how difficult it is to stop the plague. I think I told it about it's in a small Swiss town where what's other people didn't. Some started to spread a lot of gossip and really slanderous and rumors and pornographic statements about people in town, and then people heard it and they started telling each other until it affected the new one. And of course they were all upset, so they went to the village priest and asked him about it. And he said, "I heard about it too." He said, "Well, anything you can do about it? Can you locate this one who's doing it? We think it's only one person." He said, "I'll investigate." And he had an idea, and he went to him and this man, and the man says, "Yes, Father, I did it, and I'm sorry." So priest says, "Well, I have to punish you." So, "Okay, Father, anything." He said, the priest said, "Meet me at my home first thing in the morning." This is a Swiss town with high mountains and all like that. He said, "But bring scissors and a feather pillow with you." And God says, "Okay." Meets him there, and he said, "Now follow me." They walk to the top of the mountain. The wind is blowing, snowing, and all like that. The man looks at the father. He said, "What do I do now?" He said, "Take your scissors and zip through the pillow and let the feathers fly." And he did that, and the feathers just flew in this tornado wind. And, "What do I do now, Father?" He said, I want you to go and pick up every one of those feathers from the pillow." The fellow said, "That's impossible." And the priest said, that's the same thing with lies and slander. It's impossible to stop it, you know.
So it's impossible to stop it. So do you try to stop it or not?
You do try to stop it in a rational way. Actually, I'm glad you said that, Harvey. Dr. Reich said the best way, and I still believe it, and I'm sure you all do, is continue our work, publish our results. If they're good, that'll slowly get rid of the slander and lies and emotional plague, and also try to help people in preventing the newborn from being distorted into harming and eventually emotional plague and biopathies. That's about the only way.
So it just feels to me that when you're present at a time when someone is making inaccurate accusation, I think that you're duty bound to say, where do you get that? Where do you get the information?
All right. Yes.
That's.
If you want to get involved, yeah, okay, you can do that. You'll find out that somebody told them. Now, what do? You go to the next feather?
No, you simply say that you shouldn't make statements that you don't have first-hand knowledge of, and you nip that thing.
Well, look
there.
at you learned 2 and 2 is 4. You say, how did I learn 2 and 2 is 4? You said, the teacher taught me. Now, if somebody told you 2 and 2 is 5, well, unless you have enough, well, like I said, I'm just making that. But you try to get all the feathers, then you stop doing your work. For us in the field, if Dr. Ike went after all the plague, all of these articles and everything, he would stop doing his work. He did continue his work in spite of everything, and I was amazed.
In the introduction to the cancer biopathy, he apologized. He says, while this work is important, I've been going on, it's not as detailed or as exact as I would have liked it to be, but you have to understand that in answering or responding to all the attacks, it gets harder and harder to do the work.
Right.
I think that's the point.
So
That's the point of the attacks.
So, in other words, even if the Germans who said, well, I knew that it was wrong, but I just didn't want to get involved. I just didn't want to create problems for myself. Even if they had stood up and said something, the plague would have resulted in the Holocaust anyway. They wouldn't have, if people, having heard the lies and been present at the assault and the abuse, had stood up early on, it wouldn't have made any difference.
Well, if you read The Mass Psychology of Fascism, Hitler and the men around him, they didn't do it all by themselves. What he spewed out was what the people already had in them, the plague in them.
So it wouldn't have made any difference then?
Well, no, but there were a few who helped out and everything, and there were a few who helped out, and their lives, they lost their lives.
But that's like saying that the people didn't get involved because being part of the plague, being armored for the plague, they wouldn't get involved. This is what they wanted. This is what they believed. Right. So what I'm saying is, when we're quiet in the face of the lie, aren't we just acting out our own plague?
In a way, yes. Yes.
And that's advisable?
Each individual, no, it's not advisable. Each individual has to decide. Dr. Reich, like he said to us at that conference, he said, this attack is going to not stop until they just smash our economy or get rid of me. And he said, it's very dangerous. Now, any or all of you can leave the work right now, and I'll respect you, except if you attack me with them. He said, I'll smash you. Nobody left. I think, 2 left.
Cut.
Who?
Cut.
Later on. He did leave. But he didn't slander the word.
He still talks positively.
What's that?
He still talks positively about
Yeah.
Nathan Cott.
Actually, the reason he left, and I liked Cott, he was very nice. The reason he left after that Miller case at Hillside Hospital, and when Dr. Reich, well, it didn't go down. I won't say why. I want to discuss it. He left because he didn't approve of the way Dr. Reich attacked that whole. He wanted to go to court, and he felt that it was getting too dangerous. And also because of one, I won't mention his name, one of the ergonomists who he felt should have been sort of restricted in what he was doing. But that particular ergonomist was extremely helpful for Dr. Reich, who later on did restrict him. Now go ahead.
Isn't there a distinction, though, between the plague at work, like through magazine articles and so forth, affecting people's ideas, and when it becomes a legal court battle? Because, like, they just released this woman who had been persecuted because of the child abuse in a Jersey daycare center. They said she was sexually abusing the children. She denied it, but they found her guilty. She went to jail. The lawyers continued the battle, and after a number of years, she was freed. That it was unfounded.
All right, but that's entirely different. I mean, that's a single case of so and so said so and so against this woman.
Right, but I mean, with Reich, it was also so.
Yeah, but here you're dealing with the whole psychiatric, psychoanalytical, and the FDA and the pharmaceutical industry against Dr. Reich. And we have the data, the pharmaceutical industry. I'll just quote, from, I think I mentioned this last time, Harry Green, a lawyer from New Jersey, very well-known lawyer, international lawyer, who happened to be the lawyer for the pharmaceutical companies in Jersey, Johnson & Johnson, a whole bunch of them. And how did he get involved with Dr. Reich? Well, his daughter, who was a very sick girl, had gone through a lot of treatment with psychiatry and even psychoanalysis, and she was very sick, and didn't get anywhere, and she went into treatment, I think, with Dr. Baker, and she was helped quite a bit, and her father, Green, Mr. Green, was impressed, and Baker spoke to him, and he spoke to him about the tax, the FDA and the American Psychiatric whatnot, and that Hillside thing too. He said, you have a case against them. I said, well, are you interested? So he did come in and he spoke to Dr. Reich, and Dr. Reich said, well, see what you can do. Anyhow, at one point, they had a pharmaceutical convention in Atlantic City. And the president of the American Pharmaceutical Association was from New Jersey, who Mr. Green knew very well. And at the convention, in a very naive way, Mr. Green went to him and said, have you heard about this accumulator, Dr. Reich, And he said, oh, yeah, he's a nut, he said. He said, he's got that box. And so Green said, well, do you think there's anything to it? He said, nah, there's nothing to it. He said, but if there was anything to it, he said, we'd have to smash it because it would really harm the pharmaceutical industry. So anyhow, Green reported at Dr. Reich, and he said, you can hire me, he said, but this would cost you literally, and I can tell you what the lawyer fees cost, millions of dollars, and you'd probably get nowhere. So you'd have the pharmaceutical, primarily the American Psychiatric, the Food and Drug Administration, the AMA were brought in because Brady's article, So so we just dropped it, and we have it all recorded. So let's go on here, and on November 48, Dr. Miller. I'll just give you a small. It's more than this, but I'll just give you a synopsis. Dr. Joseph S.A. Miller, a New York psychoanalyst, told his staff that Dr. Obendorf had reported that a woman patient had been masturbated at the Oregon Institute. Obendorf, who happened to be one of the foremost psychoanalysts who trained with Freud and also with Dr. Reich, denied having said that. After Miller said, Obendorf said he said it. The woman, who had never been to the Oregon Institute, never even communicated with the Institute, gave the Institute lawyers a signed statement, which I have, to this effect. Miller admitted he was guilty of spreading rumors. He made no public retraction. The law office, Arthur Garfield Hayes, who was one of the foremost civil rights lawyer at that time, began a libel charge, but did not carry it out. Why? He talked about Dr. Reich. He understood the origin of the plague, and he just couldn't ruin anybody who was sick. And we had a meeting, and I mentioned this the last time too. It should be mentioned again. On should we go ahead with Arthur Garfield Hayes? And because Arthur Garfield Hayes, he said, you have a very good case here. And so we took a vote. Everybody said yes. Dr. Reich says, I can't do it. He says, I'd ruin that man's life. That was the end of that. Now, I don't know what you think of that. Do you think he should have gone on? That was him. I mean, either he believed, and he not believed, belief is faith. He knew that the plague is like any other disease. And do you punish people like that? Of course, the plague was punishing him, and eventually...
It's not a question of punishment. It's a question of treatment. This goes right back to the beginning of the discussion about what you do with violent criminals. If you don't put them to death and you can't guarantee to restrict them, then they're going to go out and they're going to take innocent life. I understand as much as I can understand. I'm not a doctor, and I didn't know Dr. Wright. With everything that I've learned about him from you, I imagine it wasn't in Dr. Wright to do this to a fellow human being, but it's just like someone else said before. If this was a cancer, it would be operative. You've always told me the first thing that you do is you take out the tumor. If it's a threat, you take out the tumor. Now, it's not a question of making this person pay. It's a question of setting the record straight. Just the same thing that you do with a bully. If you can't get away from a bully, then other bullies will follow you and terrorize you.
See, again, you're. I mean, I don't know if you're right or wrong, or whether he was right or wrong. See, I raised my hand and said, let's go ahead, But Dr. Reich explained. Sure, that Miller would admit, and he did admit later on in writing, he said I should have had my head examined for doing that. But in between, they would have brought in all the so-called authorities, all based on Brady's article, or even reading some of his works, of course, he accumulated and all like that. And that would all been out, and they would have really, the positive results would have been completely outweighed by the negative results. It's not that, it's not that easy. The plague is, you feel it all the time, It's
I think also historic, you have to understand that in Reich's experiences in Denmark, particularly, where he had stood up and had pursued this and even attempted legal action within the limits of his position in Denmark. Every meeting, every legal action resulted in not in increased knowledge of the truth, but increased attacks. He got more public support among the people who were interested in his work, but the level of the attacks increased and the level of the lies increased,
Sure.
almost catastrophically.
That's it.
And eventually it led, if anything, I was just reading an article in which he said he felt that the attempt to go public in Denmark probably hastened his exile from Denmark.
Yeah. See, again, you have to, we were talking about this, you always have to remember, he said, the only way to further study and work is to do the work and publish. If they let you, of course, they wouldn't let him after a while. And everybody else, they're still around. Every so often you hear little articles about, I don't know why, but they do. In August 49, Dr. Ellsworth Baker, candidacy for fellowship in the American College of Physicians, was regularly deferred due to what the executive secretary termed his teaching of a cult known as orgone-therapy. Dr. Baker then resolved from the American College of Physicians. He was very well known and did a lot of work. August 1950 in the Sunday Compass. Anybody remember the Compass? It was the PM. It was before the PM, and it was a good it was a daily newspaper. Dr. Rose Franzblau. Anybody remember?
Yeah.
She gave you all the information you want to know on sexuality.
Right.
Don't ever touch it. Answered an inquiry about orgone therapy by quoting from the Brady New Republic article, smear. The lie was spread by irresponsible journalism. That's all. She was a doctor, a real considered sexologist. If they published today she published about gays and everything, God, they would have burned the paper down.
Well, that's part of it, isn't it?
Huh?
It really should be pointed out that the Times, that was part of it.
Oh, yeah.
You could have. None of
Oh
this
yeah,
could have occurred in this
there's no
city,
question
right?
about it.
Yeah.
I remember at times Dr. Ike said it's too early to bring. It's interesting that you say that, and I mentioned I think the last lecture, the last time I met Dr. Ike, and I asked him, I said, what's the one big mistake you made? He said, I published too much. He said, if I were to do it over again, I would delay publishing a lot of stuff. In fact, as you all many of you know, that he has around, they claim, I don't know the files, 75,000 to 100,000 pages of written manuscript. And in his will, he said that's not to be published until the year 2007, 50 years. So you're right on that, You have to, it's a matter of timing like anything else. You have to, so, yeah. Then in 1950, The Mask of Sanity, which really put another stake in Dr. Ike's coffin. Harvey Cleckley, MD from Atlanta, Georgia, brought out in a revised edition in which Reich was given as an example of a psychopath on the basis of the Brady article and the AMA's rehash of the Brady lies. The red fascist lie was thus amplified and spread to medical schools by a doctor who used a slanderous article as material to study paranoid schizophrenia, Dr. Ike. I read all this stuff about it, I said, if he's psychotic, then I'm psychotic, because I know psychosis when I see it. In 1950, a pornographic play by Abe Mollison, Bed of Neuroses, which presented in Greenwich Village, attacked Reich's work in a typical red fascist manner by misquotation and implication of a fraud, another Brady offspring. October 1950, William Fowler of Aquasic, Maine, that's near Rangeley, told several people in the community that Organon was a, quote, communist outfit. Asked to acknowledge or deny that he made the statement, Fowler was then silent. His and other pernicious rumors about Organon were exposed publicly in a letter by the staff of the Wilhelm Reich Foundation sent to the town office and prominent citizens. October 1950, complaints based on local gossip caused Governor Payne to send Hennessy of the state police to investigate. Hennessy told Judge Mills that all the complaints made to the governor were found to be completely without basis in fact, and that the FBI had advised him that Reich is cleared of all suspicion as to his political status. Hennessy also found that people in the community spoke very highly of the work of the Institute. Note, when the emotional plague went to honest government officials to stir up trouble, these officials investigated the facts, showing clearly that red fascist methods work only where some element of emotional plague corruption is already present. Now, Hennessy told Judge Mills. Now, Judge Mills, this is an interesting side story. He was hired by the Wilhelm Reich Foundation and to help him in certain instances and also in legal matters, and he was very, very friendly. I met him. He'd come to the socials once in a while, and that was that. Then, when Dr. Reich was served with a complaint by the FBI and the government, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and it went to trial, who was the assistant to the U.S. Attorney's prosecuting the case? Was Mills. So Dr. Reich looks. So what's he doing there? Prosecuting me. So the judge, what do you mean? He was hired by the U.S. Attorney. And Dr. Reich said, but he represented me for a couple of years. And the judge looked at Mills. He said, is that true? Mills said, very sheepishly said, yeah. But I did stop working for him, which he never really did. There was no work, he figured he was a retainer. He thought I just stopped working for him. And then you wonder.
Well, the emotional play. I mean, that is the extreme seduction of it. Is that you find yourself doing things that one part of your mind might be against, and yet you do it anyway.
October 1950, a man posing as an FBI agent visited a children's camp near Rangeley and asked if the camp was a, quote, feeder of children. 2 days before his phony investigation, two representatives of the Wilhelm Reich Foundation had visited the FBI office in Boston to discuss the red fascist attack on our economy. The Boston FBI, advised that this man was not their agent and they didn't know who he was. January 51, Cosmopolitan magazine published an article by George Fraser, quotes, "Are psychoanalysts crazy?" in which Brady in which Brady distortions were repeated and some nonsensical assassination ideas added, such as Lincoln Reich with bebop. Can we stop for a while?
Since we got started a little late, why don't we take a break and eat his coffee and bagels. Also, I want to thank Seth Zeiss and Martha Gallo for letting us use the law for them. If anybody hasn't paid me, can. Also, there's a mailing list.
I don't know how you could think about quitting doing this.
I was always figured I had nothing to give. But apparently a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, no.
Another 15 until this lecture.
Okay, there are, just quickly, again, if you want to be on the mailing list, put your name up here before you leave. If you haven't paid me before you leave, give me money or a check, cash or check. And there are flyers for this is part of the ongoing topics, which are done once a month. The last one is on June 11th, and I will be presenting on Reich and Neal's approach towards child rearing and education and its contemporary impact today. So if you're interested, let me know. That will be held at our office at 440 West 24th Street, but you can take one of the flyers. Okay, well, we'll start and finish up. It'll be we started a little late, so we'll run about another 15-20 minutes and give you a little time to ask some questions if you want to.
I just want to bring up something I was discussing with Dr. Weitzner. Dr. Weitzner asked me, why didn't he go to trial, bring him to trial? And Dr. Reich, I said, especially in the Miller case, our lawyer said, we could win the libel. At least he thought, he was pretty sure. But Dr. Reich said, no, they're bringing all the other stuff and all like that. Then it suddenly occurred to me, when I was speaking to him just now, that when the trial went on in Portland, Maine, when they were trying him for the injunction, put an injunction on him. After the first trial, we were coming home by plane from Portland, Maine to New York, and our lawyer and a lot of the doctors were on the plane with the government attorney there, McGuire. And McGuire came over to our lawyer, Charles Hayden, and said, look, we don't want to put your man in jail. He said, all we want him to agree to do is put on the accumulator that organ energy doesn't exist and that this cannot do anything as far as mitigating the course of disease. So Charles Hayden said, well, I'll talk to him, but I won't. It just occurred to me when I was talking to Dr. Weitzner that they weren't interested in him, his body or anything. What they wanted to do was to kill the work. That's all. They were willing to let him go if he said all his work was just a figment of his imagination. And apparently Dr. Reich knew that. And he said, if I have to go to jail, I can't let 32 years of my work. Yes?
I once met a man who put that forward as proof that Reich was psychotic, that he wouldn't put a notice like that on the accumulator and save his life.
Well, how would that prove it? That he wasn't psychotic.
If he was psychotic.
That he was. Oh, how did that prove it?
Well, I can't feel that it does, but that's what somebody said.
He would have stayed out of jail if he had just told the lie. So
I
proves
see.
that he's psychotic.
Well,
There's one of the arguments that's often used that he was looking for a martyrdom, which I don't read into it at all.
No.
That's been one of the other way. That's another technique of invalidating the work. And the basic line, anyways, was what he said in one of the last meetings in Neil, in one of the letters that Neil talks about. Reich said to him, "Do you think I'm crazy?" He said that Reich said, "Sometimes when I hear what I say, I wonder myself." And Neil said, "Well, if you're crazy," it said the same thing that you said. He said, "If you're crazy, then I'm crazy too."
Yeah. Well, I remember when in Norway when he was working on the biomes and under the microscope, and he was working with them and he saw them, and then he had his workers with him, Nick Wall. I got a letter from her there. And other ones, Langfield and other all the rockers, they couldn't see it. Then Dr. Reich wrote somewhere, so I began to wonder maybe I had hallucinations, Then suddenly people could see what he saw, and they were working with it. And any of us who are ergonomists or even patient students who saw the blood work and the biomes, it's clear as day, So, when you come on to new things, I guess our pioneers, when they're all alone and the wind's blowing around them, they say, "Am I having hallucinations?" Do you want to say something?
No.
Oh. How come you usually do? Let me read the letter by Richard Singer, who was a psychoanalyst in training at the Hillside Hospital in around 1950, I think it was. The Hillside Hospital at the time was was the eminent psychiatric psychoanalytical hospital in I'm looking for something in New York City at the time. This Richard Singer wrote to Dr. Reich, "I reached Mrs. So-and-so, who's the patient there, on the telephone at the hospital and asked her if she had gone to the Orgone Institute. The patient replied, 'No, Dr. Singer, I have not. I have not been feeling well enough to travel, and I haven't seen anyone except Dr. Obendorf.' 'What did you tell Dr. Obendorf?' 'I told him that I wanted to go to the Orgone Institute, but he said that he would talk to Dr. Miller about it. He himself did not recommend it, but felt that I should go to another psychiatrist. Did you tell him anything about being masturbated, being undressed, or being put in a steam box?' 'Heavens, no, that is ridiculous.' 'Did Dr. Obendorf say anything about the Orgone Institute?' 'No, he didn't. He just felt that I should go to a regular psychiatrist. Have you gone?' 'No, I haven't seen anyone.' Mrs. Blank then asked me if she should go to the Orgone Institute. I told that Singer. I told her that my opinion had not changed, that she would have to decide for herself. The patient then said she still wishes to go. The patient was completely unable to account for the story, which Dr. Miller had told me, but felt sure that Dr. Obendorf would not say such things." Now, let me see. Oh, yeah. Here's another letter. Then, Dr. Singer said, "I was called into Dr. Miller's office today and presented with a letter from the law firm of Arthur Garfield Hayes. I was asked if I knew anything about it. I responded that I didn't know much, but was promptly told that this could not be the case since there were only 4 people in the hospital who knew the name of the patient: Dr. Miller, Dr. Orange, Dr. Orange further indicated that they thought that the one who carried the story to the Oregon Institute and this sense had divulged private information of the hospital. Consumed with anxiety, I told the assembled group, this is Dr. Singer, that it was true that I had given some of the facts to a member of the Oregon Institute, but that the situation had also come to their attention through another source. I told Dr. Miller that this member of the Oregon Institute had heard a rumor via a social worker from Philadelphia who heard it from Annie Wright, who was Dr. Reich's divorced wife. Something or other who had heard it from Nunberg. Now, Nunberg is the father of that psychoanalyst, right? So you see where he got it from. Who had heard it from a resident. The context of the rumor was that a patient was referred to the Oregon Institute and had put into a panic by masturbation, undressing, in a box. I told this group that the member of the Oregon Institute, which I mentioned above, is a friend of mine who asked me, as a resident of Hillside, if I had heard anything of this situation. In the subsequent conversation, I told this person all of the circumstances of the situation, including the names of the doctors present, the name of the patient, and the fact that I had already spoke to the patient on the telephone and learned that she had not gone to the Oregon Institute at all. Dr. Miller asked me why I divulged this information. I told him that I had no reason to conceal it, since in this conversation he had merely relied on to us what he had heard from Dr. Obendorf. He asked me why I had communicated with the patient. I told him that I had not believed the statement which he alleged that Dr. Obendorf had made, and I wished to investigate. After this discussion, I was called back into the office and told by Dr. Miller that he had called Obendorf, and Obendorf had denied all, leaving Dr. Miller holding the bag. In general, Dr. Miller was very much impressed with the law firm. That's Arthur Garfield Hayes. He admitted his guilt in the situation, indicating that he was perpetuating rumors which he had heard. He asked me some questions such as are the patients masturbated and so forth. I answered the question in a superficial way, whereupon he remarked that he was completely misinformed and had made a very bad mistake in handling these rumors. Oddly enough, he ended saying, if I had any brains, I would go there and take a course to find out what it's all about before shooting off my mouth. He was genuinely worried, guilty, and penitent. Now that's it. Sure, if he had any brains, if all of these people had any brains, they would at least go take a course or read the books or something. This rumor is still circulating after, 34 years. You see it published and everything else. So, you want to ask, let's ask some questions. I'll just give it just one more. Nick Wall. She had worked and trained with Dr. Reich in Norway and had become quite a well-known psychoanalyst and orgotherapist, but she in Norway, wanted to learn more about psychoanalysis. I, Nick Wall, MD, hereby report the following facts. Mita Fabian, MD, psychoanalyst at the Menninger Clinic, Topeka, Kansas, said in my presence and that of Dr. Bargman, since it is long recognized that Wilhelm Reich is crazy. She was also very disturbed about the fact that Dr. Meyer Silvert, who was also a resident at the Menninger Clinic, very brilliant psychiatrist, intended to study with Wilhelm Reich and told Mrs. Ruth Cohn that something should be done to prevent Silver from going to Reich, because Reich is crazy. Dr. Carl Menninger, in a discussion with me, warned me against any connecting my work with Reich's name, and asked me whether the Oregon business of Reich wasn't crazy. I believe that the rumors were originated years ago by the late Otto Fenico. That's where it really all started.
Who was that?
Dr. Fenico was top one. He was one of the. He wrote.
Freud's out.
Huh?
He and Reich were close associates studying under Freud in Vienna. They went to Denmark roughly the same time, and then Fenichel, by all accounts, became increasingly jealous of Reich and began to distance himself and spread rumors. He was also a very, very close friend of Annie Reich, Reich's first wife, who Reich was involved in a fight with over their children. The documentation is there in private letters that are now available. Fenichel was actively involved in spreading rumors.
Oh, yeah.
And telling students that they should not study with Reich and that they would be expelled from the psychoanalytic movement. Fenichel later came to the United States and became the foremost exponent of very classical Freudian treatment. His study, the Techniques of Psychoanalysis, is a standard text today. Largely incorporates most of the first part of character analysis, a very profound center of the book. But he died very young. He died in this country of a stroke.
So, I'll answer questions. I'm a little tired. Questions?
No questions. You answered everything.
Very, very stimulating.
Well, you mind questions that go back to what we were talking about before?
No, but that's what the question would be about.
You told me years ago, of course now you'll say you never said it, but that's that Dr. Reich said that he thought that Russia should be bombed when the United States had the atomic bomb and Russia did not, and that so much so that he literally volunteered that he would fly that mission because he wanted to demonstrate that he wasn't just suggesting this off the cuff or that he wasn't sincere in it. And when you told me this, I was stupidly appalled by it, and I thought, and I said to you, how could he advocate such a thing? He'd be killing all these innocent people, blah blah blah. And you explained that his feeling was that it was them or us.
Yeah.
And I'm just afraid this horse isn't dead. It's not that I want to beat it after it's dead.
What's that?
I'm saying that I don't mean to beat a dead horse.
No.
In the issue of whether or what you do to defend yourself when you're threatened, when you can't get away from it. Dr. Reich believed in capital punishment big time in that circumstance.
I can't argue with that. I don't even want to argue. I mean, at that particular time, he really felt that particularly China, if they'd gotten the upper hand, they would have used it.
But I'm not bringing this up because I just want to fight about it or I want to make a point.
No,
I'm just trying to understand what the
I'm
ultimate...
just telling you. That's all I can say.
Right.
Beyond that, I can't tell you. I mean, yeah.
I was very moved by your answer when you said that the answer ultimately is in the word itself. And that's what we must do. Because the way I have witnessed it is that the plague has the force of a natural phenomenon. We can respond to it in individual instances according to how we feel it. But we can't single-handedly stop it.
No.
But what we can do is concentrate very intensely and seriously on the work that we do.
Absolutely.
The work itself, in fact,
Right.
gives us a measure of certainty because of its reality.
Yeah, and it's not that easy, you know. Everybody, we all think that the truth is all powerful, but it's got to be a lot of truth. That's why Dr. Ike said maybe in 500 years it will have broken through.
There's Dr. Reich's favorite anecdote in the letter to Neil. He writes, Neil later said it was his, and Neil made it up. I found it in the letter. He said when the devil comes down from the upper world to Satan in his domain and says, Master, there's been a disaster on earth, a tragedy on earth. They've discovered the truth. And Satan looks up and says, don't worry about it. We'll send someone up there to organize it.
Did you want to say something?
Yes, because that sometimes when plague gains the upper hand, it can be easy to fall into a kind of pessimism or despair. Very natural human reaction to such a condition. But on the other hand, there could be a time when things could happen suddenly.
I can't hear you.
Things could shift and change suddenly rather than...
Yeah.
So it might not
You get
be
mutations of the plague into the truth. Yeah.
I just a thought that I had before when we were talking about the work that was being done at Rangeley, and some of the people that were working with I couldn't see what he was able to see in the microscope. And
Now this was in Norway.
wherever wherever the work was being done, I just remembered that particular part of it. The subjectivity of what the people who are attempting to continue the work is very important, and a very important element that you really cannot put your finger on that comprehensively. What it is that some people can see and some people can't, that makes a person say, yes, this is it, or it isn't, or this is the slander, or adds to the slander. So the people who do see it and do carry on the work and are able to do the functional part of it should just continue to do that because it's too easy.
Right, well, everybody's trying to do their best, but unfortunately, there aren't any Dr. Reichs around us at the present time. I'm sure there was somewhere along the line, there will be. It's there. It's all, the books are all there and everything else. God knows that they're in practically, 5 or 6 major languages: French, German, Spanish, Finnish, Japan now has it. Italian, yeah.
It's just interesting. We're talking about one man, and we're all have, I'm sure, a similar reaction. How he was attacked, hounded to death. And this whole thing about
Crucifixion.
Crucified, and in recent months and in the past year, thousands and thousands and thousands of people have been killed throughout the world in these ethnic or racial battles in Africa and whatnot, Bosnia. And the people, like let's say in our country, the African Americans who are horrified at one of their own getting beaten by the police, you hardly hear a word out of them protecting against the awful slaughters in Africa.
But that's only a number. See, whether the number is 1 or 200,000,
It doesn't make any difference.
no,
It's the
it's
same
only
thing.
numbers. It doesn't mean anything. 20,000. What's
Right.
200,000
Yeah,
people?
but that's really my
We had this
point.
one
Yeah.
kid in Singapore. Got worldwide attention. They were ready to bomb Singapore.
Right.
That's one number. 200,000 people were killed in Rwanda.
Right.
And
Right.
And of course, you can blame a lot on CNN. We wouldn't know anything about this story.
Right, but that's the strength. That's the power of the play.
Right.
That it just has this incredible force. That you're right. The numbers have no meaning.
Yeah.
It could be millions. It could be.
Yeah, like with the Holocaust. A lot of the deniers of the Holocaust, not completely like some of them, will say it wasn't 6 million. It was only 250,000.
Right.
You know.
It's not so bad.
But what is it?
I'm skipping around a little bit, but I'd like to know a little bit more about the accumulator and a doorbuster and what the exact difference.
Well, that's another.
So where-
That's another. No.
We'll have to get that over back.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else?
Any other questions?
One more. You were referring to Dr. Reich's distinguishing between Marxism and red fascism,
Yeah.
and he was a great admirer of Marxism. Is that right?
Well, his teachings, yeah.
Right.
His economics.
And
Well,
did he express that he felt that Marxism was employable and that
a lot of it was. You know, I think I mentioned this before. Marx himself, about a year or two before he died, when he saw what direction so-called communists were going into, Marx said, "Thank God I never became a communist."
But he distinguished between Marxism and communism.
Oh, yeah. Well, no. Marxism and communism, the pure communism, yeah. But what Dr. Reich saw in Russia when he spent a couple of years there, in the 20s, he said it was all red fascism. He couldn't distinguish it between that and, say, Nazism. In fact, fascism is a particular type of dictatorship. It could be anywhere. What?
Could you say perhaps that Reich's concept of work democracy is very close to Marx's concept of work democracy?
Yeah. It encompassed so-called. No. Work democracy is not as political as it's more of a primary medicine, really. Preventing arming from occurring. And he said, if we were able to accomplish prevention of armoring and everything else from the childhood on, whatever, he had no idea what form of politics or economy would develop, but he knew it would be the correct one. He never described a picture of utopian society. He didn't know. At one time, he just let his imagination go. And he probably is right too, and you see part of it, even small aspects of it today. He said the breakup of cities would occur, and we might go back, laughingly, he said, go back to the caves. And he was almost positive that the growth of population would not be as great under a self-regulatory society. See, we're being suffocated by the growth of the world population. My God. Why do you laugh?
Well, I was just thinking something I thought myself, which is that on the one hand, there's the Malinowski's descriptions of the Trobriand Islanders who don't know that they just come from men and women being together. The woman goes into the water and gets the child.
Yeah.
But the teenagers could make love freely and they
Right.
could get pregnant.
Right.
But then on the other hand, there's the Victorian times with all that sexual repression when women died from overbearing. 20 children.
Yeah, but I can't go into it now. I mean, through the Ornor experiment, he had a pretty good idea. Because, see, it's just a skeleton framework that in a unarmored society, women wouldn't bear as many children, just naturally. Just naturally.
It's a big subject, and
I don't want to go
there's a lot of evidence.
I want to hear it some other day.
We'll do it at, maybe that'll be Dr. Sobey's next presentation.
I didn't want to include it with this. This is I mean, I got much more, material on this, but I'm tired. Let's quit.
Yeah, if you're interested, pressure Dr. Sobey to do it again.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I'll do it again. Yeah, to my garage.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll give you a ride in my bike.
Hi, how are you?
Well, he's usually.
I went to the medical library and I got copies of a couple articles on prior surgery, and I was very seriously considered. I like to talk about it Monday. We got to change it to
You can talk to me, but I have no.
I know, but you got to
I'll learn from this.
I read all the Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with you to the other.
Thank you.
If it doesn't make them, it's frightening. I mean, I took a class there, and when I saw there's a big photograph when you get off the elevator that says this all, distorted, and I didn't want to go in. I just sent them, and some of them just didn't want to see it.
Sure.
Whitney is, hey, I haven't been to Whitney in 10 years. She told me that. I'm telling you now. But when you see it, I'm not telling you don't go. I'm just saying it made me ill. Not only that, but wait till you get the. You should be taking pictures of people who are there to see it. Because there are all these like Andy wannabes. They're all the like guys like this going together, and they do these things for themselves. And they have the next person, you know, it's a good thing.